Three, two, one, and we are live. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the RC3 podcast. I got a hell of a show for you guys today. And in studio, we got Mr. Johnny Hernandez.
Yes, sir.
He is a GOP advocate, Republican activist, and an entrepreneur. What's up, man? How's it going?
Thank you for having me over. I really appreciate you. And yeah, I think there's a lot going on, right? Heading up into these elections, there's a lot to talk about. So I'm excited.
I first met you.
Yes.
Was it about 2 years ago now?
A little over 2 years, probably.
Yeah.
At the end of 2019, I want to say.
Right, just before COVID, right?
Well, it was before the elections of the 2020.
Right. And you guys, by you guys, I mean you and your ex-wife, Monica Hernandez, came into my Monica De La Cruz. Came into my old studio in San Benito.
That's
at
right.
that time she was running, and I interviewed her at the time. Before we get into it, man, because you told me some shit that I just cannot believe.
Okay.
Just kind of like explain to people what your role is in the like Lower Valley politics.
I'm gonna go ahead and just back up and say, look, I have been a Republican a long time. Okay. Out of high school, my father's been a conservative since day one. And I've just been brought up that way. So I never really got into politics, but I always kept a real close look, always keeping up with the current events,
right.
Seeing who's my reps and this and that. So kind of fast forward, when I moved down here to the RGV, I was in just, Democrat territory. And I thought, wham, there's nothing but Democrats down here. And so I didn't think nothing of it. I just, went about my business just like anything. And then whenever elections came around, my ex-wife at the time, she would say, hey, I'm going to go vote in the primary. I'm going to go vote. And I go, well, who are you voting for? And she would say some Democrat, right? And I would say, well, I'm not going to vote. She goes, well, why not? Well, I'm not voting in a Democrat primary, first off. And she was like, well, that's how kind of we got started talking about politics and what we believe. I knew that she was conservative. I knew that kind of thing. But, the talk back then was you vote in a Democrat primary for the most conservative Democrat that you can find.
Right.
That's kind of what Republicans down here do. Well, so that's how it kind of evolved for us, is that we realized that there was no Republican candidates in Hidalgo County. And so if you wanted your voice heard, you had to go vote in Democrat primary. I never did. Okay. But if you look at her voting record, the RPT, their system says that she's a hard Democrat, because she's voted nothing but Democrat primaries until she ran in 2020, right?
Have we established that we're talking about
Monica De La Cruz?
Okay,
right. She's running for Texas CD 15. And this is her second time around.
Okay.
Yeah. So my role was, as a supporting husband, was to support her, her endeavors into politics. And one day she just said, hey, you know what? I'm going to go see Trump. He was flying in to border wall, this kind of thing, right? She was out there. She took the kids out of school. And there was hundreds of people out there, Trumpsters. And she was surprised. I was surprised. There were so many people out there. I wasn't in town. I was out of town for work, because I do that a lot. And so what happened is that that later that night on the news, they just showed a small group of people that were protesting Trump instead of the hundreds of people that were out there
right.
supporting Trump. And so she says, I'm just tired of this. I'm just tired of it. I want to run for an office. I said, well, yeah, we'll talk about it. So we talked about it in length. A couple of weeks, talked about it. She was looking to run as a state rep, state senator. She started out talking about school board even, right? And in the end, I said, you'll never win as a Republican here. you'll just don't even think about running in any of these. The only one that you can run for is CD15. I'm the one who told her, hey, that's the only one that you'll get money because it's a national position. That's the only one where you have constituents outside the valley that can boost you and possibly help you win.
Right.
And so that's how she decided to run for CD15. And ever since then, up until the time that we divorced, I was the one giving her basically talking points and coaching her up before speeches, giving her advice.
Right.
And so when you call me an activist, I'm sort of, I guess, but it was more or less.
Oh, come on, you know you like that title.
Well, look, I block walk. Like, I'll stand outside a polling location. Yeah, I'll do that. You know why? Because I do want to promote my beliefs. I do want to promote policies that help Americans. And so I know that politics are so much different now than when they were when I was out of high school even, It's just so partisan now. And it's actually pretty sickening now from what I've seen. When I started in high school with the current events then to the current events now, it's just amazing on how people are just, I've had aunts that will cancel me on Facebook, right? Like literally family don't want to see any of my posts because that's how partisan it's gotten. Instead of seeing the goodness of what each person is trying to accomplish, that's what we need to focus on. We need to focus on that instead.
That's a lot of wishful thinking right there.
Yeah, no kidding.
So you're talking about a person who voted Democrat her entire life.
Yes.
But had a road to Damascus moment, right? And she became a Trump supporter.
Yes.
Right.
Well, and she wasn't even a Trump supporter at first, right? I said I vote Republican, and she caught on to that, right? But then whenever we were having the Republicans were having the primaries, and it was all these different Republicans. Right. She didn't even really. She liked Trump because he was funny and entertaining, but she didn't take him that serious. And she would. I believe she liked Ted Cruz more than anybody. He's very well spoken, and he's. I would consider Hispanic, and so I mean he's not, but kind of. Like we.
Old Ralphie.
I kind of gravitate towards him too because of that. I mean, look, he's got a good story. His family came from hardships too, and so, so she was more towards Ted Cruz.
Right.
But ever since Trump was elected, then she's been a Trumpster ever since.
Stole her heart.
Oh yeah, I mean, Poppy Trump, right?
So but that's what's interesting to me. So the last time I saw you guys were working on the campaign. Right. She came close.
Yes.
To what was it, 3 percentage points?
Yes.
Down from Vicente Gonzalez, and then after that, she complained a little bit about fraud and this and that, and then it kind of disappeared for a little bit, right? Mm-hmm. And so I didn't really follow up on anything, read too much into it, but then I saw an article in the Washington Post that kind of detailed an ugly separation between you and her.
Right.
Do you want to go into that?
Well, I mean, that's sort of open-ended, but I don't know where to start.
Well, better yet, let's go into that.
I it's kind of hard to say exactly where the roads kind of started going in the wrong direction. So let me back up and say this, is that I don't advocate for divorce at all. I'm really sad that people have to go through divorce. I really wish that our society was in a place where we would honor the family union. And so, I'm a product of a single dad. I was a single dad at one point before I married her. And so I really valued being married, and I feel sad about that situation. But it was absolutely necessary to get a divorce from that lady, and I'll go into it and I'll talk about it. Um, so people, a lot of people say, well, what happened? I mean, you guys seem to be doing fantastic. You guys are making money. She's getting popular with the Republican people. Like, she almost won an impossible election. Like, what happened? And, people change. I mean, look, politics really does change people. She's not the same person that I married. But she still has a lot of the same qualities. Um, and I didn't know at the time that it would be a detriment to our marriage, those qualities. And I can go over so many things that should have been red flags, and ultimately were the red flags for me. So we were a very good partner to each other when it comes to business. So in that regard, I felt unstoppable. Like, the sky's the limit. She's super hard worker, super go-getter. She's not the smartest, but she will outwork you all day. And she'll tell you that. She said, look, I'm not going to be smarter than you, but I'm going to outwork you. And she does.
Yeah.
And so, those are some of the good things. But, I mean, look, the lady thinks that she's never wrong about anything. She's not humble about anything.
Which is common. I mean, let's be honest.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you're going into politics and if you're a businesswoman, those are some of the characteristics, like I said, that she had then, she still has now, should have been sort of red flags, and things where ultimately she doesn't know how to compromise. And so if you're in a marriage, and I'm not trying to give marital advice at all, but there always has to be some compromise. Always. I mean, one person can't always be right.
Yeah.
It's just impossible. So, so people ask, like, hey, what happened? Ultimately, there was only one thing that we argued about. That was it. And that was my daughter. How she treated my daughter was the only thing that we ever argued about.
Now, how early in the marriage did that start?
It started early. Little by little, though. It wasn't like the day that we met and she met my daughter eventually, like, she was ugly to her then. No,
Right.
It wasn't like that, right? My daughter was only 5. It was a gradual thing.
Right.
And so, it gradually just got out of hand. And I had to do something about it. Eventually I had to come to terms with my own, self of not doing what was right. I let it go on for too long. And I'm still feeling the repercussions of that. My daughter she's doing a lot better. Don't get me wrong. She's doing a lot better, but I look at myself and I say, well, I put her in this situation for so long that, how much better could she be?
Yeah.
At this point in her life. And I still have hope, and she's still doing well, and she hasn't regressed since we've been away from Monica. She's been doing so much better being away from that woman.
Let's backtrack a little bit. When you say that she would mistreat your daughter, what does that mean?
That she wouldn't?
That she would mistreat your daughter.
That she would.
Yeah.
Simple things at first, like treating her different than her own daughter, or little things like going to the neighbors, and if the neighbor kid and my daughter were playing and her own daughter was being left out, she she would tell my daughter, "Hey, you know what? We're leaving because you're not including, Sophia or something. Little things like that." And till this day, she still lives by that neighbor, and the neighbor girl that lives right next door doesn't want to have nothing to do with Monica, because she's just that ugly towards the neighbor, the daughter of our neighbor. And that daughter and my daughter were like best friends, right? But they never could hang out because of Monica. So it's just things like that, right?
But those things sound like minor annoyances.
Yeah.
Right? Like something that you have a conversation over dinner with, right? And you say, "Listen, I don't like what you're doing. She's your daughter,
Yeah.
And then you hope that they get resolved. But those things don't lead to a divorce usually.
No. So it got to a point where my daughter didn't feel comfortable around her. She would stay in her room a lot. She would basically, if she didn't have to be out of her room, she didn't want to come out of her room anymore, because Monica would always pick on her. I say pick on her, single her out is a better thing, is a better way of explaining it. And when I say that, it would be like, Mariela, you need to do this, or you need to do that. And she, sort of like the Cinderella effect, right?
That's what I was thinking in my head right now.
No, it was absolutely like the Cinderella, right? And I would tell her, I would tell my ex-wife, "Hey, why are you singling her out? Like, why are you doing that?"
Right.
And some of her excuses would be like, "Well, you know what? She needs to learn discipline. You're not disciplining her enough." Things like that, right? Things that are like, "Well, we have different opinions on how to parent." Things like that would come up, and that's when the arguments would start. And it was always like simple things, right? Like, she didn't put her shoes up correctly, or things like that. Very like minute things that can be blown out of proportion.
Right.
And so I was always like the one extinguishing the fire in the house.
And was she like that with her own daughters?
You know what? She's pretty tough on her own kids too. She was. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, look, I could tell you stories about her son. She called the cops on her son one time. He's 12 years old.
Oh shit.
Yeah, when he was 12. And
what the fuck did he do?
He didn't want to go to school. That was it. He didn't want to go to school.
911.
And he didn't want to go to school, and so I was out of town. Normally, if something like this was to happen, I would be the one, "Hey, Joseph, let me sit down with you and talk to you and tell you why you have to go to school," right? If one of the kids didn't listen to her, like automatically, like snap her fingers and it was automatically done, then she would do something drastic, right? And so the kids knew that they could come to me, and I would be the person of reason. And if I couldn't reason with her, then it was just, things weren't going to get better.
You're sleeping on the couch.
Well, I mean, no, I wouldn't sleep on the couch, but that's kind of how that was the dynamic. Those are the inner dynamics of the family, right? So she was always right. She would always tell like everybody what to do and blah blah blah. I would be like, "Hey, wait a minute. There's maybe a reason why this isn't the way you think it should be." And I feel bad for her son at the time when she did call the cops on him, because I wish I was there to defuse the situation. I would do it all the time. So if I wasn't there, it would blow up to something like that.
Yeah.
And so and the only one that she really didn't do that to was her daughter. And so she was the baby basically. And I miss those kids. I absolutely miss them. I was their dad. I took care of them. I worked from home, so I picked them up. I took them to school, picked them up from school, cooked them dinner, and still made money. I mean, I don't know what else this lady wanted from me, but just to be a controlling freak, a control freak. That's basically it.
Yeah.
So I couldn't protect my daughter completely from that type of environment the whole time. and it just escalated. It just continued to escalate. It escalated to the point where I had to divorce the lady.
So that's what I was going to ask you. Like right now you're describing, a situation. I think people listening might be hearing and say, well, yeah, she sounds like she's like a tough lady,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But I haven't really heard anything,
Right.
anything that's beyond,
Right.
that would cause a divorce, right?
Sure.
So that goes on. Things like that go on for about how long?
Oh, well, I mean,
Because
I think when we got married, I think my daughter was 7, right? So at about, I'm going to say about age 10, 11, when my daughter was getting more into puberty, things just got out of control. So my ex-wife, Monica, she would tell me things like, I'm not going to say anything to your daughter anymore. Because it's just going to start an argument between me and you. You don't like the way I parent her. I'm going to tell you, you're going to tell your daughter what to do. And so that's kind of how things started escalating. I told her, look, that's not right. But you know what? I'm glad you're going to leave her alone. That's kind of how I felt, because my daughter was starting to be a recluse, like she would stay in her room and she wouldn't want to come out of her room because she didn't want Monica to be on her, telling her that how terrible she was or that she didn't do something right.
Yeah. I'm sorry, you said she was about 10 or 11 at this point?
Yes.
So you had been with Monica already for about 5-6 years?
Well, I was with her a year and a half before we got married.
Right.
And so we're probably into the marriage about 3.5 years.
You had been dating her before that?
Yeah, for about a year and a half.
So, okay, so then your daughter starts kind of just bowing out of the family dynamic.
She's like, you know what, and let me tell you, okay, a little bit about my daughter. So there's been articles about mental health, about her mental health state and everything like that. Let me tell you something. My daughter is a very kind soul. She would do anything to make the situation correct. But she was at a breaking point. So she had a lot of different, growing up, she had a lot of obstacles. And I say that, and she's overcome a lot of obstacles. But one of the things at a very early age is she had coping skills. She didn't have coping skills. She had problems at school, and we come to find out later that she's dyslexic. So so she had a little bit of learning disability, and so she would do things a little bit differently, and I think those are some of the things that would trigger Monica. If she didn't do it exactly the way she wanted it to be done, my daughter would do it backwards or something wrong, right? So I think this is some of the things looking back that I can say, well, maybe those were some of the little things that kind of sparked the bigger things. And so yes, it just sounds like she's a hard ass, and she was. But you got to also know your children, right? You also can't treat every single one of them the same. You got to know, well, this one's super sensitive, right? Like, let's not tell her every day that she's doing it wrong and that she doesn't know what she's doing, right? Let's find different ways of communicating. And then ultimately, in the end, that's all I wanted my wife to do, was to learn how to communicate with my daughter differently.
Yeah. And
to treat her different. And so, but everything is hindsight, right? Everything that I'm talking about now is hindsight. At the time, I'm just thinking, hey, we're doing good, we're making money, she's, doing this political thing. Everything everything else was fantastic, honestly. I couldn't, in the 5.5, 6 years that we were married, we were able to accumulate a business, commercial property, 4 houses. Like, we're just rocking and rolling, other than this part.
Yeah.
And so I hate to say it, but it kind of overshadowed that part. all these other things kind of was in the forefront of how she was treating my daughter.
Yeah.
And I put the blame on myself for that, right? Because there's no other person that could have protected my daughter from her other than me. So that's on me, and it's hard for me to say it, because it hurts to think that I could have had a better impact on my daughter's younger life instead of just go, make the money, let's get more power, whatever else. Ultimately, at what expense? And it's not. And you see it. Not only I see it personally in my own life, but I see it with other political figures. You look at their children, Hunter Biden and all these other, like, at what expense? You even got the situation in Hidalgo County now, right, with Aaron Pena the third. Like, and even before that, he has a brother that had passed away before that, and their family's doing all the political things. They look great on camera. They say all the right things, but at what expense?
Yeah.
At your kids' mental health expense? It's one of those things where it's not really being talked about, right?
Let me ask you, Johnny. What role did the politics have in the situation?
Yeah.
Because I don't know if you just heard, but even Marjorie Taylor Greene, her husband just filed for a divorce, right?
Yeah. And I've heard statistics that men file divorce like very rarely. I think it's like 30% of the time. The majority of the time, it's always a woman that files for divorce. So when a man is filing for divorce, there's something wrong.
Yeah, shit's shit's rough.
Right.
Yeah, but you see, that's kind of the situation, right? Like the political establishment, the politics, right? They turn these people into rock stars.
Yep.
Right. Somebody like a Marjorie Taylor Greene, who becomes like the biggest funder in the Republican Party just by saying like outlandish shit,
right.
Yeah. And the money's rolling in, man. Yep. And a person like that can do no wrong.
Right.
Right. And that has to play some kind of a role within the family dynamic,
Oh, absolutely.
Because it's not like a job where you can just punch out, right? And then you could go home and it's like, we'll worry about that tomorrow. Like, you constantly hearing about yourself on the news.
Yeah.
You're constantly seeing articles written about yourself. And if you already have if you already have an ego, or if you already
you mean she's narcissist? Yeah,
exactly. If you're already a fucking narcissist, imagine what it could do.
Oh, yeah.
So, and if you already never think you're wrong, you kind of get where I'm going.
I know,
right?
exactly, because I've seen it firsthand.
Right. So, like, what was the point where at what point was it the boiling point? Like,
yes.
Was there a specific event that happened? Was there something that happened that you're like, fuck this?
Yes.
I can't do this no more.
Well, there was 2 points, right? The event with my daughter was absolutely the breaking point, but there was actually a point before that, and I don't talk about this that often because it's like it hurts. It hurts to think about. Me putting my entire being into this marriage and my entire effort to make my marriage work.
Yeah.
To have somebody basically not give you the same in return. And I'm gonna explain what I mean. Is that my daughter had moved back to Houston with her mom during COVID, and I would go see her every other weekend. Okay. Well, one weekend, on a Thursday, I took my daughter out to Astros game, okay? We're over there eating ice cream, watching a baseball game, right? And that night, I took my daughter home. In the morning, her mother calls me and says, hey, Ella's got a fever. And this was amidst, the COVID situation. We were just getting back from COVID. Like, they were just starting to let crowds again. And anyways, so she says, I'm going to get her tested for COVID. That day, I was scheduled to go back to McAllen, to Edinburgh, back home. And so I called Monica and I said, hey, Ella might have COVID. And she goes, well, don't come home. I said, well, what do you mean? I said, I don't feel sick. And she said, well, wait until you know if Ella has COVID or not. So I said, no, I'm driving home like right now. So I started driving home, and sure enough, my daughter had COVID. Okay. So her mom, my daughter's mother, said, don't worry, she works in the medical field. I'm going to take care of our daughter. What you need to do is go home and quarantine and, get tested. And I said, okay, you know what? Yeah. Now, at the time, I'm living in a 5-bedroom house, right? I had a spare bedroom, bathroom. So I call up my ex-wife, Monica. She's my wife at the time. And I just said, hey, babe, I'm going to come home and I'm going to go quarantine in the spare bedroom, right? And she says, no, you're not. I said, what do you mean I'm not? I said, that's my house. I'm coming home. She said, no, you're not. I said, she told me that I had to go to a hotel and that she didn't want me around her. And that was the point where I thought, she doesn't love me the way I love her. The minute that I thought that she might be sick, I'd be taking care of her. That very minute. But on the flip side, she didn't want nothing to do with me if I was sick. So that told me right there that I was not in a relationship where my spouse loved me. She didn't care. She would rather see me or not see me, and rather I go stay somewhere else,
right,
and be sick by myself. And so that was during the summer before the incident with my daughter. So that was about 2.5 months right before I decided to bring my daughter home. And so this was boiling in me. It was starting to fester to think that I was with the woman that wouldn't take care of me if I was dying. She would not care. And so I was sick to my stomach a lot of times being around her. And at this time, she's, campaigning again. She's, people in D.C. started taking, notice of her. And so she, less and less she needed me, because I was the one coaching her up in the first campaign. She didn't do that first campaign by herself.
Right.
And so it just festered in me. And so I continued to go back and see my daughter every other week. And I could see that my daughter was progressively getting worse mentally and emotionally. She was going downhill quickly. And the reason why she was having a really rough time is because during that 2020 to 2021, within a year, her grandmother passed away. And her mom lives with her parents. So she's living with the grandparent, right? She's living with her grandparents. And so the grandmother that was living in the home with her passed away. The grandfather had a heart attack in front of her.
Oh, shit.
In front of my daughter. My daughter's uncle, which is her mom's brother, who lives in the Netherlands, committed suicide. So her mom was devastated. And her mom ended up drinking a lot and ended up with 2 DWIs. And when I found out that she had the 2 DWIs, I said, this is enough. Like, I'm taking my daughter, and she's coming back to live with me. And when I decided that, I text Monica, and that's, I don't know if you've seen the text or not, but yes, you have.
Right.
I showed you
Showed
earlier.
me the text.
So that night when I decided to bring my daughter home, and I told Monica, hey, listen, Ella is having a really rough time. I want to bring her home. I want to take care of her. I want to do the right thing. Like, this is my daughter. I want to take care of her. And you got to remember, I've had custody of my daughter since she was a baby. I was a single father. So my instincts kicked in. And I said, I'm taking her. I don't care what anybody else says. And
yeah,
Monica basically told me, fuck your daughter. Like, if you bring her home, I'm divorcing you. Like, you and her can go to hell. Those are her words.
Yeah.
Those are her words. And so, as a man, as a father, I had to make a really tough decision. I had to bring my daughter home, into a home where this woman does not want my daughter, or leave her with a mom who's struggling, grandparents are dying, and let her stick around for that. At least when she was with me, I can watch over her. I can make sure she's okay. So I thought, right? So the breaking point was whenever we were in church one morning, and we got there early. The girls went to Sunday school, and since they went to Sunday school, I bought them Starbucks on the way over there. I said, well, y'all are going to Sunday school? I'll buy you Starbucks. And so after the Sunday school, we were going to Mass, and we were sitting in church, and I accidentally kick over my daughter's Starbucks, right? Well, she starts to cry, okay? Now, normally I would say, yeah, you're 12 years old, going on 13. You shouldn't be crying over spilled milk or spilled
Right.
coffee, right? You shouldn't. But she was going through all these things, right? Like, she was just not emotionally strong.
You're right.
She was just, she just kind of broke. She broke mentally, she broke emotionally, she broke. She started crying. And I said, baby, it's okay. I'm going to clean it up. When I got paper towels, started cleaning it up. In the meantime, Monica's telling her daughter, take Mariela, that's my daughter, take her to the restroom and clean her up. Well, they're getting up. The girls are getting up to go to the restroom. Well, Monica gets up and goes too. So I didn't know this at the time, but that's where an incident happened in the restroom, where she went up to my daughter, pinched her on the shoulder, grabbed her, and told her that she was just manipulating me. She was accusing my daughter of manipulating me to feel sorry for her, and that she needed to stop crying, and she needed to clean herself up. Well, they come back and my daughter's still crying. So I said, well, let's go. Like, we have to go. So I didn't know this incident happened in the restroom where she had gotten physical with my daughter, and where she's, basically calling her a liar, and that there's nothing wrong with her.
Right.
So we get home, and one of the things that we had agreed upon was that we wouldn't argue in front of the kids, because we would before we were arguing in front of the kids, like, hey, don't say that to them, or I would tell her, don't do that. And so when we got home, she proceeded to just treat my daughter like straight up Cinderella. She told her to clean the whole house, that the other two kids can go out and play, while Ella cleaned the whole house. And the whole time she's crying. Like, my daughter didn't stop crying for 2 or 3 hours. And that was it. That night, my daughter, I didn't know this until later, but my daughter that night, after she finished cleaning the whole house, she went upstairs and wrote 5 suicide letters. She wanted to commit suicide at that point. And so, I didn't know this. I'm not going to say that I didn't know that she was in a bad shape. I knew she was in bad shape.
Emotionally,
yeah. Mentally, everything. I let her go to her room, and I let her be in her bubble, right? I thought I was doing the right thing. The next day, I had to go out of town for work. Monica was going to Dallas to fundraise money. And so she was coming back on a Wednesday morning. Anyways, so the kids were there. When she gets back, she goes through Ella's room and finds the suicide letters. And then that's when she admitted her into the mental hospital. So when I get back from work, I was in Puerto Rico at the time. I get back Friday morning. As soon as I knew that she was going in, I got on a flight as soon as I could to come home. And that was it. I said, you can't treat my daughter like this anymore. We're getting divorced. If you cannot change, I'm out. She was fine with that. She wasn't going to change. She didn't want to treat my daughter any better. And as a father, what can I do?
There's a lot of people who are gonna hear your story, right? And all I can do is like put myself in your shoes, right? And it's easy to say, well, I would do this, right?
Yeah.
Or I would do that. That's easy to say because I'm not in your shoes, right? But a lot of people would say, well, like, were you trying to appease her?
Always. I was trying to make, happy wife, happy life, right? But that's not right. It's happy spouse, happy house. It goes both ways, right? So, and these are things that I don't have all the answers always. I look back, hindsight 2020, and I'm like, man, so many things that I could have done different. There's so many things. I just thought professionally, socially, we're fucking killing it.
Yeah.
But family life, my daughter's getting destroyed in this family.
Yeah.
She's the one that's being destroyed.
Yeah, because when you mentioned that when you were bringing your daughter back from Houston, right?
Right.
And that you reached out to Monica and you told her that we're coming home.
Yep.
And that she basically said, fuck both of you.
Right.
Right. And you showed me the texts.
Yeah.
They're the texts are real. What? At that point, like, how was that not your breaking point? Like at that point, you had to have known, like this can't work.
It was close to being the breaking point. It was very close to being the breaking point. We had set up counseling with our pastor. So I thought maybe he could talk some sense into her. We had gone to conventional counseling, marriage counseling.
Yeah.
And we still had where we were going. So I thought maybe in the scope of things that maybe me sitting with other people and discussing, hey, you're not right, that she would change, but she wouldn't. Even our pastor couldn't change her.
So then we fast forward to present day.
Yeah.
Right. She's still campaigning.
Yep.
I haven't seen the recent polling or whatever, but she's
gonna win.
Last I heard, she's favored. She's favored to win.
Gonna win.
A lot of money has been funneled into not only her campaign, but Myra's campaign.
Sure.
There's a huge, inside baseball.
Right.
Politics behind it all.
Yeah.
There's a huge, the people up in Washington.
Yep.
They see something in her.
Absolutely.
right? I mean, what do you think it is that they see in her that is, that she's worth the investment?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of things, honestly. I mean, look, people want to win. And politics is all about winning the next election. That's what it is. That's what it boils down to. And she's a winnable candidate. And not only is she winnable, but it was the perfect storm to where redistricting was happening. And so they have a candidate where if you gerrymander just a little bit better, that it's a for sure deal. It's a slam dunk. And so you get that same person to run again. And you funnel more money this time. The first campaign, $0 from DC. Zero. It was all blood, sweat, and tears. Moved the needle. I think we moved the needle like 9 points, something like that. It was something phenomenal with no DC help. In the first campaign, if they would have just poured $1 million into that campaign, she would already be a congresswoman. So they looked at her and said, hey, we missed out on an opportunity right there. And not only that, the narrative works.
What's the narrative?
Oh, it's so easy. The narrative is she's a businesswoman, the American dream that lives on the border, knows the border.
Hispanic.
What we've gotten to in the Republican Party is something that we absolutely never wanted to go to, and that's it's the identity politics, right? Republicans, we don't see color.
Well, that was always bullshit, though.
Yeah, I mean, but listen, they never came out and said it, but now you have to have a Hispanic woman business owner on the border to win this election, and she checks all the boxes.
Yeah.
And so and look, she's fake. I mean, when I say that is that she's able to put on a persona. So she's good at that. She's very good at trying to make people feel like she really does care when she really doesn't. So she's a born politician, really. All she had to do was be put in the right scenario at the right time, and she could do it because she's a hard worker. I'm never gonna say she didn't work. She worked hard. She'd make 100, 200 phone calls in a day, and raise a lot of money. And she's not scared to ask for a shitload of money.
Right. And
that's what they like. And so she's a fundraising dream for all these Republicans, and they've basically pimped her out. If you look at her financials, I haven't looked at the last quarter, but the quarters before, she's raised something like in the ballpark of $2 million, right? But she only has $200,000 in cash. You ask yourself, well, how is that even possible? To have raised $2 million, you spent $1.8 million? No, you haven't. So here's the scheme that the Republicans do, and it's a genius thing, right? So what they do is they get this person that they know that they can fundraise with, right? She's got all the credentials as far as checking off all the identity politics for a Republican now. And what they do is they say, we will email our donors. All our donors, we'll email them your story, and we're going to ask them to donate to you. But the first go around, we get 90%, and you only get 10%. And if you can get them to donate twice, then you get 50-50. Something like that, right? The second one it's negotiable.
Right.
Okay? But the first one is 90-10. So she's making 90% of that money that she's raised is going back to people like Ted Cruz, going back to Kevin McCarthy, is going back to Dan Crenshaw. Everybody that's already basically endorsed her and given her their email blast list,
Right.
they're just pimping her out.
That's the game.
That's the game. And so she has phenomenal numbers, but how much cash does she have on hand? You can go look it up. And you can say, well, where did all that money go? It went into the pocket of the other politicians. That's where it went.
So, Kevin McCarthy,
Yes.
he endorsed her
Yes.
pretty early on.
Yeah, he did. He did. And so the story behind Kevin McCarthy is, and I've met him. I've met Kevin McCarthy. So what happened is that obviously when she lost by only 3 points, people in D.C. were like, well, who is this lady?
Right.
And so early on, he said that he wanted to pick the 5 candidates that were going to be the ones to flip the House. And she was one of them. And so she was invited to Utah. I can't remember the name of the town in Utah. But they do this every 2 years, the year after the election. They invite the next 5 to 10 candidates that are going to be anointed, basically, as the ones that are going to win the next elections. And so she was one of them. And so she gets invited to this, I don't know, majestic place up in the mountains in Utah somewhere, where only the elite Republicans are. And basically, they told her, you're going to win. And we're gonna endorse you, all these Republicans, Elise Stefanik, all the leaders,
All the big names.
all the big names. We're gonna endorse you, but you got to vote for Kevin McCarthy when we flip the House. So there were strings attached from the very get-go. We talked about it from the very get-go. Whenever this was happening, I would talk to her about it, and at the time it seemed just normal because you want them to fundraise for you. It's all about, getting the money and them voting for him. And so it was a business deal. And that's how it's done.
Yeah.
And so
but that's kind of is how the sausage is made, though, isn't it? In Washington, I mean,
What do you mean by that?
it's a dirty business, right?
Yeah.
It's deals,
Yeah.
I mean, at the time, he still is the House Minority Leader,
Right.
So he has to ensure his survival. He has to ensure his power.
Yeah, but at the time, right after the elections, and still the biggest rivalry to him as Republicans go is the Freedom Caucus. And
he was a part of the Freedom Caucus, wasn't he?
No.
I'm sure he was.
I don't think so. I don't think McCarthy was ever part of the... I might be wrong, but I know he's not now. The leader of the Freedom Caucus is Jim Jordan. And they were contemplating on propping up Jim Jordan as the next Speaker of the House. And I've met Jim Jordan as well. So I can honestly say, out of all the Congress people that I've met, that I haven't been particularly that impressed with really any of them. Honestly, they're just regular people.
Yeah.
I mean, Jim Jordan, though, he kind of looks like, when you meet him, he's kind of like he looks like a bigger persona on TV than what he really is. He's kind of well-mannered, quiet guy. But the Freedom Caucus has backed down a little bit. I think they're going to see what Trump... I think Trump will run, but it's not 100%. So right now, the Freedom Caucus is backing McCarthy. As of right now, from what I've read and from the sentiments that I get. So, I think that... But at the time, McCarthy was shoring up his bid for the Speaker of the House, and he needed her to be on board. And so, like I said, the redistricting happened, and they knew that she was going to win. So they knew from the very get-go that she's going to win.
She's going to win. And
Yeah.
I mean, how likely is that?
I'm going to say there has to be something like catastrophic for her to lose now. I think Michelle's a good candidate to go against her. I don't think either one is really that qualified, to be honest. Like, none of them, Michelle nor Monica, has ever really done policies, right? None of them is really has a background in law or legalities or anything like that. So I kind of look at both of them as like that's a wash. So then you look at the Democrat and the Republican side of it. Well, honestly, if the Democrats just come out and vote, they could still win.
No.
But they're apathetic. Even in Hidalgo County, they're apathetic. So the numbers are still there that the Democrats can win, but they just got to come out and vote. But on the flip side of that, the Republicans are fired up because of the last election, right? They think it's been stolen. So every Republican in the district is coming out to vote.
Yeah. But I mean, the calculations are also changing a little bit, though, right? You know, the whole red wave. You know, it's not looking so much like a red wave anymore. At least not. I mean, they're not predicted to win the Senate.
No.
At least it's closer than it was.
It's a lot
3-4 months
closer.
ago, right?
Yeah.
Kind of the overturning of Roe versus Wade.
Right.
It kind of stalled a lot of the momentum that the Republicans had going on. And there's a whole lot of special elections that have happened since then.
Yes.
They've shown that the Democrats are overperforming the poll numbers.
They are.
Yeah, and so, I mean, I don't know, like, the Valley. You know, how much the overturning of Roe versus Wade would pump up Democrats to come out and vote. Like, consider,
I think zero.
You think so?
I think so, and let me tell you why. It's because nobody we're still Hispanics down here that don't want to talk about abortion. Like, you think that that's something that we talk about at the dinner table? No. People down here don't want to hear
Maybe
about
older
it.
people, but I think that's changing a lot, man. Like, it's something I would feel free to talk about.
Oh yeah.
You know, I know my parents wouldn't.
Exactly.
Right.
And they're the voting age, right? Maybe the younger people, like people coming out of high school or maybe college students,
right.
will. But how strong is that a voting bloc? They're not that strong, really. I mean, there's a lot of them, but they don't come out to vote. That's what I'm saying. They're apathetic.
Right.
If they come out to vote, then the numbers might change.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like, in a lot of these special elections that have happened afterwards, the Democrat vote has been undercounted.
Right, but there was more of a fresh feeling at that point, right? So it just happened, Roe versus Wade. Then you have these special elections, and then all of a sudden, every Democrat and their mama's out there voting.
Well, one just happened 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a seat in New York that was just filled. That was in between one of these. It was in a district that it could go either way. It went for Trump last time, and I think that the Democrat hadn't won in I don't know how many election cycles, and he blew the other guy out.
Really?
You know, and he was running on abortion rights. And the other guy was running on, you know, the Biden economy and this and that, and the Democrat won. Now we just saw what happened in Kansas also with them voting abortion rights into.
Yeah, but how about we rewind a little bit more here in District 34? You got Republican Myra Flores that won.
There's a lot of circumstances.
You see what I'm saying?
But there's a lot of that. Those in context, it doesn't seem that impressive in context.
Well, you're right. I mean, look. Myra Flores did something that was amazing, I'm going to say. But it was, I think it's going to be short-lived, unfortunately. I do like Myra. I think
me too.
I think she's got a big heart. I think she's trying to do things, for the right reasons. But honestly, like I said, like I've been telling this to a lot of people. I was in meetings where we talked about the redistricting, and literally we took these precincts that vote like 90% Democrat, put them in 34. The districts is 80% Republicans, put them in 15, and that's the reason why she's not going to be able to win it again.
Yeah.
and that's the reason why Monica's going to win. And so it just, it's just the nature of the beast. These were deals that were done not even here, So, looking at it now, I feel like our voices do get kind of washed away a little bit because the gerrymandering does happen. Now, look, in this case, we're getting a Republican, but unfortunately, it's my ex-wife that I think is undeserving to be in it. Yeah. So I mean, and of course, everybody's gonna say, "Well, you're bitter for your." Yeah, I am. I'm a little bit. I'm sad. I'm sad of the whole situation. I'm sad that I didn't see it sooner, and that I didn't. I would have rather have divorced her before we got into politics.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want to see this part of politics. It's a dirty game.
And I'm sure you've gotten that before. People saying that you're just salty.
Yeah.
That you're bitter,
Yeah.
But I don't know, man. If you look at the situation, the text you showed me is fucking mind blowing. It's definitely something that people need to know, that people should know. We're sending people to Washington. At least we ought to be sending people that have of good character,
yes.
Right? But we're in the political climate right now that none of that shit matters.
But none of it matters,
right? Like none of that shit matters. All that really matters is just like my guy needs to get in there.
Exactly.
Like our team needs to win,
right?
And fuck your team, right?
Yeah, and it's a moral. It's the Republicans being morally bankrupt and putting in morally bankrupt people, and they're the ones who tout themselves as faith, family, freedom, right?
Yeah.
And here you go. You have, her own pastor that can't even change her heart or show her or open her heart to a different way. Right,
but and maybe we're just getting into something else, but like religion inside the GOP, like you gotta know it's just a branding exercise, right? Like that's really all it is.
Well, let me tell you something. I love to go to church. I'm not perfect by no means. I go to church as often as I can. I even go on a Tuesday for meditation and prayer. So I think that there are some people that do it for the branding, and there's some people that are genuine. And I think that it's probably the same thing for Democrats. We're
talking about politicians, yeah.
There's probably people that go to the Basilica like every other day, right?
Yeah.
And they're Democrats. So it's about what's in somebody's heart. And yeah, the Republicans do brand themselves as the party of faith. But just like any other party or just like any other group of people, you have your good and your bad. And you have people that take advantage of that branding. And, people that are morally bankrupt, as she is, they need to be called out.
Yeah.
They just need to be called out.
And going back to the whole family, faith, and freedom thing. I mean, me and a friend were just talking earlier about what had happened with, what's the kid's name? Jordan De La Garza? Jordan De La Garza for Texas.
Yeah.
That tweet that he had put out, it's like,
that is so unfortunate. I feel for the families of the Uvalde. I can't believe he's just that dumb.
I mean, to put out the tweet, I mean it's pretty stupid to begin with, right?
Right.
But then to have an actual parent call you out.
I mean, that's heartbreaking.
I mean, at that point, it's like, man, and he, to this day, he hasn't apologized.
No, he won't.
The Monica campaign hasn't, just pretended like it never happened. Right? I mean,
that's what I'm calling about morally bankrupt, right?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, if you touch yourself as like, we're God-fearing, and this whole, man, like the masculinity play inside like the GOP, like the whole like, we're fucking with a tough guy and just that. I just
it's so fake.
Yeah, I just can't help but laugh at that kind of shit.
Yeah,
man.
Me too.
And it's like, no, man, like a man owns up to what he does.
Yes. And
says, you know what, I fucked up.
Right.
I apologize. I should have worded it better.
Yeah.
I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings. You guys have been through enough.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, that's all he had to say. Exactly really, what you said. Yeah. And maybe they would have left him alone, right? It's hard to come back from a dumb statement like that. So maybe that's why he's not even trying, right?
Yeah.
Maybe he's just like, I'll just wait until it dies down, and
Which is the play now, right? They just kind of pretend like it never happened,
right? Just like if more people hear this story that I'm telling about my ex, they're just hoping that it just fizzles out, that it goes away. So that's the play. You're right.
And that happened here it happened within this month, right?
Yes.
But what happened? The one story that I haven't, caught up with is with the Arron Pena.
Yeah. Now that's also very. It's a horrific story, actually, and there's several young females that have come forward to say that they were harassed by Arron Pena III. Now, just to give you an idea who he is, he's the son of Arron Pena, who is the candidate for the 13th Court of Appeals. So he's a Republican running for an appellate court judge position. So it's his son. He's also the brother of Adrian Pena, who's the head of the GOP in Hidalgo County. So you have this family that's basically running the Republican Party in Hidalgo County that has been covering up his actions this whole time, which is unfortunate, right? There's been several girls that come forward to say, hey, he's harassed us, and nothing has been done. So finally, I think there's a few girls that are actually going to file police reports, and that's where it's at now. I don't know if anything else has happened, but I do know that one of the young females, I won't say her name, but she's a very well-established person in the Republican Party as well. So she has a lot of respect. She has a lot of people admire her as a person,
right.
and she is part of an organization that is very well established. So her story could be the story that's really that can really shed light into this whole scenario. Now, was she the one that was harassed the worst? I don't know. I don't know every single story, but I know that there's more than 2 or 3. There's more like 4 or 5. And so it's something now that they can't sweep under the rug anymore.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate that it took that many females for it to happen to before one of them was brave enough to say, hey, enough's enough, right? So I don't know what's going to happen. I think that this is really an ongoing story at this point, and I just feel for the victims. I feel that it's unfortunate that this has been going on for as long as it has. Yeah, and it's just sad.
But what's the significance of who he is? What?
Well, I mean, look, he's worked for the Republican Party of Texas. He's worked for the Republican National Committee, the RNC, straight out of D.C. He's worked for them.
Oh, wow.
He's worked for the GLO, the General Land Office, which is one of the highest departments in the Texas government. And so he's had very powerful positions, very influential positions. He was even the field director for Mayra Flores.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so the story goes there is that he actually left her campaign for health reasons. But in reality, we think it's because of the situation that's ongoing right now. So and as a matter of fact, somebody asked Mayra Flores at an event about 2 weeks ago, what happened? She goes, well, I fired him. But initially, she came out with a press release saying that he left for medical purposes. Mm. So which is it, right? Did he leave for medical reasons, or did you fire him? She, out of her own mouth, she said she fired him. So
I guess the point is that he's gone, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's gone, but I mean, number one, who wrote the press release that's not correct, right? Number two, why did you fire him then? You fired him because you have suspicion that he might be guilty?
No.
I mean, if so, you need to tell him to come forward and confess, or make it right in some sort of way. Like, you're the congresswoman now. Let's see you be a leader. Let's see you force the issue. Either way, why don't you make a group for the victims, right? Why don't you try to support the victims?
Yeah, take control of the situation.
Take control of the situation. Yeah. So I don't see that happening, and that's a sad thing.
And so, Johnny, like, you've considered yourself a lifelong Republican.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
You've been a Republican for so. After all this bullshit has happened with Monica, the bad divorce, the damage that was done to your daughter, like, where do you see yourself at? From here? Basically, right? But where do you see your role as right now in the GOP?
Well, honestly, I've thought about that a whole lot, and luckily, I don't live in the Valley anymore, right? So when I do get active again, and I don't know if I will or not, but it's going to be in another county in another area of Texas. Right. So I won't have to deal with this situation down here and how ugly it's gotten in Hidalgo County. So I've thought about it a lot, and I think that in the future, I think I would like to continue to promote policies for the American people. I would like to continue to voice my opinion, because I think that everybody's voice should be heard. And I think that when it's all said and done, yes, I consider a very good president in President Trump, because of his policies, not because of personality, not because he's a moral leader or anything like that. I think because he did promote the policies that I wanted. He did it in a bombastic way, not typical of your typical Republican. The last time I saw a president as entertaining as him was Bill Clinton, right? Hey, look, Obama was a great orator, fantastic speaker, but he's not as entertaining as Trump. Bill Clinton would get up there with the saxophone, and of course he had his issues, but yeah, I think that in the end, I'm still going to be for policies that promote America first, and I'm going to voice my opinion on that. And I think that eventually we will get beyond the Trump era. I think that it's a long cycle. We might have to go through it another 4 years after this, but presidents aren't forever. America is forever. The American dream can live on. We can still, have these policies that can promote what that means.
Right.
And that's what I'm for. I'm for America. I'm not for one president, and that's it. This thing about being a Trumper and everything else, yeah, I mean, look, I held a Trump flag, yeah. But that's because he's doing the policies that I want, and America first.
But you know what I'm going to ask you, right?
What's that?
You know what I'm going to ask you, right? The whole trying to overthrow an election thing. I mean, that doesn't bother you. I mean, seems a little contradictory, man. On the one hand say America first, and on the other hand not give a fuck about democracy. I mean,
No. I think that that's a misconception that people that think that every Republican is like that. There's a lot of Republicans, and there's
192 right now Republicans that are Stop the Steelers that are running for Congress.
Yeah,
192 of those motherfuckers that don't believe Biden is the legitimate president of the United States. That's a problem.
No,
I don't think we've ever. I don't think we've ever been in that situation in this country before.
Well,
you can't tell me that's healthy. And so it's like you can say, yeah, the policies and the economy, but if we're numbers people, right? If we're numbers guy, right? Because this is my only issue with a whole lot, even family, right? That we get into the whole Trump thing, right? Well, yeah, man,
it always ends up in a Trump
right.
discussion.
It's like, well, yeah, I mean, I might not like his character or his fucking tweets or this and that, but the economy was great and the policies were great. I go, well, let's go back a little bit, right? If you look at the economy that Trump inherited, he inherited a pretty fucking good economy by the numbers. As a matter of fact, Barack Obama's last quarter in office created more jobs than Trump ever created, and that's a fact, right? So if we disabuse ourselves that Trump is just like amazing on the economy, then all you're left with is character. You know what I mean? And all you're left with is an authoritarian, again, stop the steal, a narcissist, and.
So I got to disagree with you.
That's my take on it.
Yeah, I got to disagree with you on that. And there's
but you can disagree with me, but you can't disagree with the numbers.
Well, no. I'm not disagreeing with the numbers, but what I'm saying is I disagree with him only being either economy or character. Let me just say this about the other issues that I thought that he was right on, is that putting America first, and what I mean by that is that he called out all the NATO countries. He said, hey, y'all aren't paying your fair share. America's going to stop paying their fair share. So he forced other countries to be like America first. Not only that, he's like, China's killing us. Like, they're raping us in the economy. Like, we're not going to put up with that anymore.
But what did he do about it?
No, he put tariffs on their. He put tariffs on their economy, on their goods, and look,
dude. I mean, to be honest, Biden has done more to bring manufacturing back home than Trump ever did.
Oh no, but see, I think that
and I didn't vote for Biden.
I think the spark was started with Trump. But you're right. I can't argue with that.
Is this Mike live?
Yeah.
Another thing you have to consider is that. Trump.
Try to talk a little bit closer into it.
Trump used the same technique that FDR and JFK used, because FDR won because the radio was in your home and he connected with you, and he used a new medium of communication to win. FDR won. JFK, the television era, the reason he won was because he used that medium of communication, and he effortlessly and charismatically took the victory during that one Nixon versus that live the first live presidential debate.
You're right, where President Nixon was sweating and shit.
Whether you hate him or love him, he used the meme economy, and he used it very well. He said things like crooked Hillary. He said things like lying Ted, and he understood that sound bites are really what people take home. And he took the meme economy and he used Twitter, just like the past two presidents that used communication methods that didn't exist before, and he leveraged it, and he got free marketing, and he was if you see past the whole supposed narcissism and supposed negative traits.
It's not supposed, man.
Right. No,
it's not supposed. There's nothing supposed about it.
Right. Marketing is a lot like that. Marketing is you're still talking about him to this day.
Right.
Marketing your podcast. That's how effective his communication was.
Right. But we just talked about President Biden. Look, you'll never hear me make a case that Trump, when it came to, at least in 2016, 2020 sucked as far as campaigning goes. But at least in 2016, the dude politically was a beast. He was a beast, man. He was a beast, dude. Yeah. I mean, I won't.
That's what I'm saying. He stole the whole
right. But I'm talking right. But I'm not talking about whether he was a good campaigner
or positive.
Yeah, I'm not talking about whether he was a good campaigner.
You're
or not.
saying a president.
I'm talking about the dude's record as a president. Right. I mean, two things could be true.
Yeah.
He could be an amazing campaigner and a smart marketer and a great brander and yada yada yada. And a shitty ass president, which is where I stand, right? Like one doesn't make the other.
Well, you know? I think that he was a good president. I really do. I really believe that he was a good president, and that he can at the very least, he continued with that market, and he tried to make it better, and that's why I am still, I don't want to say defend him, but I will sort of defend him, because you're right on a lot of things about him. I didn't like his moral character. I didn't like a lot of things
listen,
about him.
Dude, I don't. We're talking about presidents here. I've never made a case about any president on their moral character. I mean, dude, I'm not a choir boy, man. Like,
right.
You know, I voted for Trump in 2016.
Okay.
You know, so I mean, the whole I don't like his tweets thing. I mean, you're talking to the wrong guy. You know, no, on policy, on just the gaslighting, on I'm bringing jobs, I'm bringing the manufacturing back home. The first tax bill he passes incentivized outsourcing the jobs. It's always the saying of one thing. Again, the reason why I'm harder on him is because he was such a brilliant marketer at convincing people he was doing one thing while completely doing another. I'm going to drain the swamp. First motherfucker he hires is a Goldman Sachs guy for the Treasury. I mean, dude, I can go on and on. It was a giant ruse, man. It was a con. The whole Stop the Steal, dude. He was able to raise $250 million from average people who bought into the fact that they thought that the election was stolen from him. And you want to know how much of that was actually used for litigation on Stop the Steal? Not a penny. He pocketed all of it. It's on record, like it's there. If after that, if you don't see the con, you just don't see the con. Mm-hmm. And if you don't see it, I'm not going to get you. At this point, I've given up. You know what I mean? It's like it's there in plain sight, and all I can do is show people like this is a record. And if you don't, and if you're still a Trump guy, you're still a Trump guy.
Well, let me tell you. Okay, so if let's just put this out there. If Trump decides to run, and if DeSantis decides to run, I'm backing DeSantis.
Well, that's starting to heat up behind the scenes. Have you heard about the shots they're taking at each other now?
No, not behind the scenes.
So Trump was the one that was kind of firing shots at DeSantis because I guess Trump felt like DeSantis was kind of like taking his thunder a little bit, and he really didn't like the Martha's Vineyard thing, not because he felt bad for the illegals, because he did it first. He thought it was because it was his idea. You know what I mean? So behind the scenes, he called out DeSantis on that, and there was a whole bunch of donors that were used to be Trump donors that had switched to DeSantis donors, and that was the straw that broke the camel's back, you know? And so he called up those donors and basically told them, well, what the fuck you guys think you're doing? Right? And so they were kind of like, all right, we'll go back to you. But DeSantis started throwing some shots back at Trump, again, behind the scenes. Yeah. But these things leak on purpose, man. Oh, you know, they leak on purpose. And supposedly DeSantis, the one thing I agree with DeSantis on, well, there's a few things I agree with him, but the main point here is that he said about Trump that he's a moron who has no business running for anything, you know? So, and then Trump's basically saying, well, I made Ron DeSantis. And I mean...
Yeah, it's starting to be a pissy contest.
And so Ron DeSantis is basically saying that when he runs in 2022, Ron DeSantis is going to run in 2024. He says the only way to beat Trump is to take him head on, and to take him out of his own game. So it's going to get good, man.
Yeah, it's going to get
interesting.
No, but so recently, and maybe like 2 months ago, a Facebook page came out, Texans for DeSantis. So I've been inviting people to go. Yeah.
I got invited to that.
Yeah, I think I might have been the one who invited you, maybe. So, but yeah, look, I would be all DeSantis all day. Yeah. You know, he's a veteran. There's a lot of good things about him. And yes, he's sort
smart, man.
He's super smart.
He's smart politically.
Right.
He knows how to leverage the media just like Trump did. Yeah. But he doesn't have all the foibles that Trump had. Exactly. You know what I mean? Even until now, publicly, he hasn't said a word against Trump. Right. Publicly. You know, and but he knows how to do that culture war, man. Like
the culture war, he's got it down pat.
Oh yeah, he's gonna be a force to be reckoned with, man. Yeah. And so, but listen, man, we're about an hour and a half here, man.
Okay.
You and I can go on forever about this stuff, man.
It's great, man.
You know this, man.
Yeah, we have good conversation. I love whenever I have the opportunity to speak with you, Raleigh. Anytime that that I'm able to get enlightened by you. I love that.
And likewise, man. I like I said, man. We the give and the take, man. The jousting.
Yep.
It's my favorite thing to do. Is there anything that you feel like you left out?
Hey, look. I just want everybody to know that my daughter's doing well. She's doing a lot better. Life's good. I still believe in Republican values. I think that I think my perspective though has changed, and so I do call myself more of a progressive conservative. I think I've mentioned that one time on your podcast before. So I think that that especially in Hidalgo County, I think they need to wake up and be a little bit more morally have a better moral compass onto the party, and I think that's really the only message I have for the RGV. Is I pray that the Hidalgo County straightens their act up, the GOP in the Hidalgo County. So that's basically it.
All right, brother.
Yeah.
And on that note,
Appreciate it, man.
I appreciate you coming in, dude. It was fun as always, man.
Yeah.
We'll see you guys